So this session is about setting up automount with and without systemd. Now, automount is a very important topic, and automount is also a difficult topic. It relates to RHCSA as well as RHCE. In RHCSA, you need to be able to connect to a remote server and do that by using automount. And in RHCE, you need to configure these remote servers, and you might also have to configure automount. And in this session, you will hear how things are going. I was kind of preparing for this session, and I was wondering, why did I do that? And that is, well, the reason I proposed this session is because it's a difficult topic. The reason why I was wondering why did I even propose this session is that it's not a nice topic and it's not a very clear topic to be talking about. So I was just thinking, couldn't I pick something else? Well, I guess the interesting thing about these kind of sessions is that you learn stuff about things that really matter. And automount is one of the things that does matter. So let's talk about automount. Let's start at the beginning. If anyone has worked with automount on RHEL 6, well, you can still do it in the RHEL 6 way. So what I'm going to explain in this session is first how to do it using the AutoFS servers in the way that worked on RHEL 6 as well, because that is the easiest way. Next, I will cover the AutoFS method with the RHEL 7 enhancements. And next, I will cover the way that you can do automount through systemd. So basically, we will get 3 different approaches on how to configure automount. And what I can advise to you if you are preparing for the test is that you are not going to try to figure out all 3 of these methods, but you are going to pick out one of them. And you are going to make sure that you master one of these methods perfectly so that you can do that method on the exam. And everything else, well, you don't really care about that, I guess. And if I may give you my 2 cents about it, the method that I described in the beginning still does its work for everything that you need to automount in RHEL 7 as well, and it's the easiest method. So in this method, we need a service. So the service is AutoFS. So I type systemctl status AutoFS, and we can see everything that is happening here. We can see that it is running. And apparently it is also, it's having a problem with set auto mnt end. Now that is starting right, that's starting well. So there seems to be something wrong. Look up SSS. What is SSS? SSS is SSSD, and SSSD is a service that on the backend can be used by automount, about which I'm going to talk later. Just making a note for myself so that I'm not forgetting to tell you about it, because otherwise I would give you information that's not really useful. So the starting point of automount is the configuration file let's do auto.tab, and you can see that there are many configuration files. The single most configuration file is auto.master. Auto.master is a method that worked in previous versions of Red Hat, and that still works. We also have an auto.master.d, which follows the pattern that instead of using one generic configuration file, you can now also use a configuration directory with different snap-ins in that directory. But let's start by trying to understand what is happening in the auto.master file. This is the master file, anyway, that the AutoFS service is going to read when it starts. Now what we can see here is that it contains a couple of items. Item number 1 is a very valuable item if you are going to do the exam, because this is the example item. This is going to tell you, if you want to do automount on the MISC directory, hey, let's go have a look in auto.misc what is going to happen. So this is the blueprint of the classical way of configuring auto mounts, and I think this is a good starting point. So let's quit the auto.master file for a while and have a look at the auto.misc file. So let's do a vim on etc auto.misc. And what you can see here is some examples for miscellaneous items. None of them is currently activated, but they provide excellent examples of what you might want to do. Now, the first example that we see is for CD. Now, what exactly is this CD? Hey, do you remember in the auto.master file, the line began /misc. So this CD is a subdirectory that relates to the misc directory. So basically that means that if somebody is going to the /misc/cd directory, we are going to execute this line. Now what is this line? Basically this is a line with auto mount options that explain to the AutoFS service how it should be mounted. So it should be mounted with a couple of options. First option is the FS type, and then we have some other common mount options. Now the interesting thing here is that this is a device mount, and if you want to mount a device, that is anything that is starting with /dev, you should start with a colon. So colon/dev/cd-rom. So where in FS tab you would specify just /dev/cd-rom, in automount you will do the same thing by using colon/dev/cd-rom. Now the next thing that is going to happen is another very useful example. This is an interesting one, because at first sight you might think that this is an example about configuring an FTP server. It is not. It is an example that is showing you how to create an NFS mount to ftp.example.org /pub/linux. Now, why is this so interesting? Well, this is interesting because automount is a very useful service, especially for stuff like NFS. You want NFS shares to be mounted automatically while accessing the directory. So again, if you take away the pound sign, the idea would be that AutoFS is monitoring the misc directory. The further configuration of the misc directory is in this auto.misc file, and we can see here that there is this Linux. So this is about /misc/linux. And what we've got here is a couple of options that specify how to perform the mount. So we need to do read only and soft and enter. And what we are going to mount is ftp.example.org /pub/linux. I hope you realize that this is not going to work because NFS over the internet is a bad idea anyway, and ftp.example.org is not going to be reachable. But if you have a server that is, say, server.example.com that shares the directory /data, then you would just replace this by server.example.com /data. And that is telling you how the mount is going to be used. So if you understand how this auto.misc file is working, this is really the best example to start with on the exam. Let me go a little sidetrack. Automount is difficult, right? I see some questions passing by. I'll have a look at them when I finish this. So automount is difficult, right? So what you can do is try to remember everything during the exam. That's probably not going to work because you will have stress during the exam and you will forget everything that you have learned. So what you can do is find some useful examples like man pages or AutoFS servers, or man page or whatever, or this configuration file. And I think this etc auto.misc configuration file is extremely useful. I see some activity on the chat. Let me have a look at this. Do you need to specify FS type in options when auto mounting NFS? No, you do not. You can also see that in the example. And given the format of the link, it is automatically recognized as an NFS mount. The mount command, which is behind all automount as well, is a very smart command, and it is capable of analyzing the URL or the identifier or the device that is going to be mounted. So based on the pattern server name : / directory path, it is recognized as NFS. So where in your FS tab you need to specify that it's NFS, in automount you do not. By the way, thank you for answering each other's questions if you can answer that. I appreciate that so that I can stay on track and continue my story about automount. Let's go back to auto.master. So what we can see in auto.master is that we also have a /net directory. Give me 1 second because I'm realizing that I need to start one virtual machine. By the way, these test virtual machines that I am using here, they are available for download as well on my website, which is rhcert.com. They are behind the login and you can download them for free. I currently have a KVM version and also a VMware version. So if you want a completely functional test environment, you are welcome to download these test virtual machines. In the test virtual machine, I have an IPA server. This IPA server provides excellent backend services for everything you need, especially in the RHCSA test. If you are a customer of RHCSA, then you have noticed that I'm using server.example.com, which is, server.rhcert.com, which is on the internet. And that works more or less, but by using this IPA server and test environment, you've got everything you need in your own environment. And that is so much better. Let me just do a quick verification. Oh, I already got it here. It's the 200 address. That's what I wanted to know. I've got my IPA right here because that is what I need for /net. Now, what is /net? /net is going to monitor hosts on a network. So the idea is that if I have an ipa.example.com server that is offering some NFS shares, that automount is providing access to that through the /net directory. Let's see if we can get that, if we can get it working. So the first thing I want to do is ping on ipa.example.com because I want to know for sure that it is available. We have already verified the availability of the AutoFS service. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to the /net directory. And in the /net directory, I see nothing right now. Let's do ls-a. As you can see, there is nothing, just dot and dot dot. But if we are going to do cd IPA, then it should connect to the IPA server. Let's hope that I don't have any demo demons today. I do have demo demons. So it is having a problem. So why is it having a problem? Well, that can be because the IPA server isn't sharing anything. Now, how do we find out if the IPA server is sharing something? This is a little side topic, but it's an interesting side topic anyway because it can annoy you. You know show mount, right? Show mount-e on ipa.example.com. Which is going to show you everything that is available as an NFS share on ipa.example.com. We can see port mapper failure here. Now, does that mean that nothing is available on the target server? Well, not necessarily. It just means that show mount doesn't deal with NFS v4 too well. So let me do something very nasty. Systemctl stop firewall D. I don't want to go into detail about firewall D tonight, neither about NFS, so I'm just going to stop it. The problem is that show mount is doing an NFS v3 call, and if on the IPA server I have opened NFS v4, show mount doesn't get through the firewall configuration. So let's try it again, and there we can see program not registered. So that's a completely different story, which probably means that I don't share anything on my NFS server. which makes perfect sense why my demo doesn't work. I'm not going to try to fix the demo here because we only got an hour. Just know that any NFS server that is offering something that is reachable can be reached through this net directory. You know what? I was thinking that it might be useful to have a working NFS server anyway. So let's do a quick cat on etc exports to see if we've got something. We have nothing here. This is a 2-minute how to set up an NFS server demo. So let's do mkdir / something. Let's do cp from etc everything starting with a, b, or c to / something. It has some contents and that makes it easier to verify the working. And let's do vim on etc exports, which is the file that is configuring the exports that should be shared. So what I want to share is / something, and I want to share it to everybody. Let's do that read only anyway. Read only Y. RW works well as well. Next, we are going to do systemctl start nfs-server. And that went so easy that I need to verify it. So systemctl status NFS server. It seems pretty happy. Now let's do showmount-e localhost. This is something that I can really recommend to verify the availability of your NFS server. Just do showmount-e localhost. At least you'll be sure that you are not annoyed by any firewall or anything. Now let me get back to my client session and let's do showmount-e on ipaexample.com as well. Now we can see that / something is available. Now let's go to net. We are already in net and let's do cd ipa.example.com. And as you can see, we are now in the ipa.example.com. By the way, it doesn't matter that in here I used IPA and in here I'm using the fully qualified domain name. Both will work. So this is one example how AutoFS is making stuff easy to you because it allows you to access NFS shares over the network in a very easy way through the /net directory. As you can see, there is this something subdirectory, of course, that is the name of the share, and we can see the A, B, and C files in the file. So I hope this makes sense, and this is one of the easiest way to show what is in there. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going back to the etc auto.master file because this auto.master file is directing everything. And then comes the part that is making something that already was a little bit complicated, more complicated. So etc auto.master.d, how does that work? Well, it works through some direct and indirect files. So what you have just seen in this etc auto.master, let me repeat what you have just seen, etc auto.master, is that there was this /misc directory that is directly configured through an etc auto.misc file. So this is telling, hey, AutoFS, monitor the misc directory, and you will find further specifications of what we need to do on the auto.misc file. Now, what we are seeing here on the automaster.d is basically that they are taking away this line from the auto.master file and they are putting it in a separate configuration file. And I have created two configuration files. I just wanted to do this right, so I did a little bit of preparation for this. So what we see here is /shares on etc auto.demo, and we also have a home.autofs, which we'll be talking about later. Now, what we see here is basically the same function as what we have just seen in the auto.master file. Okay, let me stop for 5 seconds. That was 5 seconds. Think on how you want to approach it. I mean, putting it in the etc auto.master makes it a direct approach. Putting it in the etc auto.master.d makes it an indirect approach. So that is adding an additional layer. And I really don't see why you want to do that, because it's making it more difficult. So maybe the most important message about the entire AutoFS story tonight is, hey folks, don't go through auto.master.d, just keep it simple and go through the auto.master configuration, because that works. Think about how you want to approach that before you are starting to listen at the next part of my explanation, because I am going to make it more difficult. So how am I going to make it more difficult? By telling you about direct and indirect mounts. So what we can see here is of an example of an indirect mount. So we specified that we have the shares directory. If we want to know what we want to do in the shares directory, we should have a look at the auto.demo file. The other example is providing /dash. That is a direct mount, which means that everything that is needed to complete the mount is in the auto.direct file. Let's have a look at the etc auto.demo file, which, as you see, is related to the shares directory. So what we can see here is data, and data is an NFS mount to lab IPA :/data. Let me just change that in something, because I currently don't have this data thing. So something. So what does it mean? Well, it means that we are talking about a subdirectory here. The data directory that we have just seen is a subdirectory of the shares directory, right? The other example is a : and that is defined in the etc auto.direct file. So let's have a look at the etc auto.direct file as well. And what we can see here is a definition of /mnt, which means that this is going to take care of mounting the contents of lab IPA :/home on the /mnt directory, which means that if in home we have used Lisa, we will see /mnt/Lisa. If you want to know more about that, I have described this with pretty clear exercises. That is, I hope the exercises are pretty clear in my upcoming book, and you should read that. So the indirect mount is a classical approach. In the classical approach, as we have seen here, there's this master file that defines the directory to monitor, and this secondary file that defines the subdirectories that will be created. And that is exactly the line that you can see here. That's the indirect mount. And the direct mount is taking it everything and putting it in the auto.direct file, or whatever you want to call it. That doesn't really matter. I didn't talk about naming yet. You are completely free in defining the names that you are going to use for this AutoFS. I like all my AutoFS files to start with auto. It kind of makes sense, doesn't it? It makes it easy to find back your auto mount configuration, especially if it grows large. Then yeah, it's easy to find them back with one simple ls command. Now let's have a look at this shares directory. As you can see, the shares directory exists. This shares directory, by the way, is managed by automount. This is also important to realize. If you are trying to do it on an existing directory, automount is taking over. It is like mounting a device over an existing directory. Have you ever tried to mount a device like SDA1 on the /USR directory? If you have never done that, you should do it. You are going to hate me for it, and I'm not going to press enter here. Just try. If you have an SCA1 device on your system, you don't know what's going to happen. Mount dev SCA1 on /USR. And after that, go into the USR directory. That is exactly the approach that AutoFS is taking. So if you would want to try to mount your remote home directories on the /home directory, for example, automount would take over the /home directory. Just wonder, what does that mean for your locally created users? Well, as automount has taken over their precious /home directory, the poor locally created users cannot access their home directories anymore. So that's not a good idea. Be careful about it. What did I do in the etc auto.demo file? Let's just see. Oh, that was a data subdirectory. So I'm in shares now, and let's do data. And what you can see here is that we have a data subdirectory right now. And this data subdirectory is providing access to the same share that I've just created on my lab IPA server. So it's the two-step approach, right? The one-step approach, the direct file, I'm not even going to show that because I don't want to confuse you. I repeat, and that is important, there are 3 different approaches to take on your exam. And you are going to fail this topic if it occurs on your exam if you don't make a choice before doing something. So make a choice, decide which approach you want to take, and don't mess them all up. There's something else that we need to talk about, and that is this home.autofs. So what is the idea? This is something that works together with an LDAP server. Think LDAP. I hope you have played with LDAP. I know that at least Dan has, but everybody else I don't know. If you have played with LDAP, the idea is that you are going to log in to a remote server. So the user accounts are remotely, which means it's like an Active Directory login. Oops, did I say Active Directory? Yeah, I did, because I know that most of my audience is using Active Directory anyway. It's like an Active Directory login. If you log into Active Directory, it's like single sign-on. Yes, Ian. If you use any way of single sign-on, your user account doesn't exist locally. Now, the typical Linux approach is that we have this etc passw file in which we have users, like my user Lisa here. And this user Lisa has, oops, I keep on doing this, it's not a good idea. This user Lisa has a local home directory /home/Lisa, right? Now, what about an LDAP user? If your user Lisa exists in LDAP, then she can log in from any machine in the network. And you need to make sure that the home directory of this user is available on any machine in the network. Now, think about this. Do you really want to create this home directory on every different machine? Of course not. And that is where automount comes in. So let's go back to the etc auto.master.d. You can see there is a home.autofs in there. Let's have a look at the home.autofs. What do we see in here? We see that the home.autofs is taking care of /home/guests, and the further specification is in etc auto.homes. So that means that all of these auto-mounted home directories are going to be mounted on the /home/guest directory. So if you have a look at the auto.homes file, you can see what is going to happen. So auto.homes, what do we see here? Well, this is something very interesting, and you need to make sure that you know how to do this if you want to be able to create access to home directories for LDAP users. Read the RHCSA specifications. Configure against a remote authentication server is how they define it. Read the RHCE objectives as well. This is very clearly in the objectives. Now, how does this line work? Well, this line tells if anyone is trying to access star That means anything, right? Star as in ls star. So if Lisa is going to try to access /home/guest/Lisa, we are going to mount the corresponding thing. That's the end sign. We are going to mount the corresponding thing on lab IPA :/home/LDAP. So when Lisa logs in, the only requirement is that LDAP user Lisa has her home directory set not to /home/Lisa, but to /home/guests/Lisa. Which means that upon login of user Lisa, Lisa is going to access /home/guest/Lisa. And then automount wakes up and thinks, hey, I need to mount the corresponding thing from lab IPA. And that is /home/LDAP/Lisa. And it will be mounted automatically. So do remember this star and sign. If you have attended previous classes that I have provided, or maybe watched my video course, thank you very much, Gaurav, for doing that. Then you know that I like knowing where to find stuff on the system in case I forget it on the exam. I haven't found a decent man page yet that describes this line. So better be prepared and make sure that you can do this on the exam. Now this is classical automount. Let's resume. This is the two alternative ways of configuring classical automount. Now you may have noticed that in Red Hat Enterprise Linux 7 we have this amazing new thing which is called systemd. And you can mount through systemd as well. So how you can access the lab, Ola Waller is asking. Go to rhcert.com behind the login. So you need to create an account and you need to log in. And behind the login, you will find a link where you can download the labs. Bandwidth is not very good right now, but it's okay-ish. It should work. Just be patient. It will come to you. Many folks have successfully downloaded the labs. So let's talk about systemd. In systemd, there are many different unit files. And these unit files are all provided through two different directories. Let me do a 2-minute what is relevant about systemd to know for this session recap. So we have user lib systemd system that contains unit files, and we have etc systemd system that also contains unit files. This is your custom unit files. Your default unit files are in user lib systemd system. And some unit file types are the mount and automount unit file types. So if I type ls star mount, we can see, well, mounts and automount examples at the same time. Let me start by doing the explanation of how to mount through systemd. The best example is the tmp.mount file. Again, just make sure that you can find good example files that you can tune as required to make sure that you can do the same thing on the exam. The tmp.mount example file is a very good example file that is going to tell you everything you need to know to create a mount. And that is because every automount in systemd needs a mount as well. Good, let me have a look at the tmp.mount file. What we can see here is the unit description. The unit description is going to show you description, temporary directory, documentation. That's all boring stuff. Conflicts and before, this is also boring stuff. And then it's going to tell you what exactly it should mount. So what we can see here is that it should mount the device tmpfs. That is a kernel interface, and that is like a RAM disk. And tmpfs is going to mount it to be mounted on tmp. And the type is tmpfs, and it has some options as well. Now, if I would do system systemctl enable tmp.mount, it would be enabled. And if I would do systemctl start tmp.mount, it would be started as well. Yeah, I'm talking about how to mount through systemd, because you cannot know how to configure automount through systemd if you don't know how to mount through systemd. So if we type mount now and we grab the output through a pipe and filter that for TMP, you can now see that TMP is on TMPFS, and that's a RAM thing. Now, this is nice, but this is just the local mount. I'll finish this story and then I'll have a look at the questions so that I don't have to interrupt this story. So give me a couple of minutes, Gaurav, please. So this is how you would configure a normal mount, and this is what can replace mounts as handled through etc fstab. But if you want to do auto mount, you need to do some more. So the some more is you need to umount first, TMP, and then we cannot do this on a mounted file system. We need to go through the tmp.mount file. By the way, Gaurav is mentioning something that is useful, and that is that the name of the mount file needs to match the name of the mount point. So tmp.mount is for /tmp. If your mount point would be /home/blah/something, then the name of the mount file needs to be home-blah-something. If I'm glimpsing what Gaurav is saying in the chat, good input, Gaurav, thanks a lot. That is basically it. So we need to make this an auto mount. And in order to make this an auto mount, you need to add an option. And the option is that you need to add no auto. Now, why is that? That is because in order to do the auto mount thing, you need to make sure that the tmp.mount unit file is enabled. But if you enable it when it starts up, then it is going to mount it as well. And you don't want to do that. You don't want to mount it permanently, because if you mount it permanently, it doesn't make sense to create an auto mount for it, right? So you need to add no auto. Now, is that a smart idea on the TMP directory? I guess not, is it? So let me do it for something else. I'm going to create a configuration from scratch to make it a little bit more clear and to do it on a non-system directory. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to copy cp, the tmp.mount, to /etc/systemd/system. That is because everything you are going to create as custom configuration should be an etc systemd system. I don't want to think too hard, so I'm just using TMP as an example. Also, let me do a quick check and see if I've got something I can mount. I think I can mount SDE1, mount dev SDE1 on /mnt. Oops, I cannot mount SDE1. Let's try SDD1. I've been messing around too much with this system. In the end, I will find a system that I can mount, but maybe I just have to do fdisk-l on dev SDD. And there we go. SED6 should be mountable. So mount dev SED6 on /mnt. That works. Do we have anything in the MNT directory right now? We have two subdirectories. That is perfect. So let me get out of there and let me umount the MNT. And let me create a mount point as well. We are going to mount SDD6 on the groups directory. That's what I want to do. By the way, systemctl disable tmp.mount because I don't really want to enable it. So the first thing is that we need to go to etc systemd system. And in etc systemd system, I am going to check what I've done. And now it's tmp.mount. I want to mount it on groups.mount, so I should rename it. That is mv tmp.mount to groups.mount. Again, as Gaurav also mentioned, the name of the automount file must match the name of the mount point. So I'm going to edit the groups.mount file. Yeah, I was wondering, why doesn't my tab key work? And that is mostly because you're doing something that is not okay. I'm taking out this, no, I'm not going to take it out. It doesn't really matter. What really matters is the mount part. So what I'm going to mount is dev SDD6. Where I'm going to mount it is groups. The type, oh, that's a good one. I think it's exe4. I didn't have a look at it. Mode 1777. Let's not do those options. Let's just do the option of no auto. And ACLs, because it's cool to have ACLs. Wanted by local-fs target. That sounds perfectly fine to me. I'm afraid I have to mount my thing again. Did I already unmount it? Yes, I did. So I'm going to mount dev std6 on groups one time manually, because I need to know what type of file system it is. And I guessed right, it is an ext4 file system. So I'm going to umount it again. And now, well, basically I don't have to do anything anymore on this groups.mount because everything is okay. The only thing I need to do is systemctl enable groups.mount. The next thing I need to do is cp this. Now I'm not going to cp it here. I want an automount example. And I know that I have one automount example in user, share, lib, and so on. So I'm just copying user, share, lib, system, d, system. Did I say user, share, lib? Stupid me. User, lib, system, d, system, star, auto mount to here. That should copy one file only. Yeah, the proc sysfs bin fmt whatever automount. Let's rename that to groups.automount. And let's clean it up a bit. So everything in here, condition path exists. Well, this path doesn't have to exist. The only path that needs to exist is groups. I don't want to do this dependency. Let's take it out. Default dependencies, let's take that out. Condition path is read write. I believe that it is going to work. That's not too interesting. So automount, what I need to do in there is specify the where. So as you can see, the automount part of the unit file really is very basics. So I'm just specifying where is groups, and that is enough. So let me do a systemctl enable groups.automount as well. Oh dear. So the unit files have no install section. They are not meant to be enabled using systemctl. Let's read what is happening. Possible reasons for having this kind of units are unit file. And okay, I overlooked something and I did it on the wrong example file. Oh dear. Now imagine that this is going to happen on your exam. What are you going to do if that is going to happen? Well, man pages. Man-k automount. And we can see that there's a systemd.automount file. So let's have a look at systemd.automount and see what it is telling us. So what we need basically is automount and some explanation. And the explanation here we can see automount units must be named after the automount directories. Example, the automount point home Leonard must be configured in the unit file home leonard.automount. And okay, nothing more about that. And for each automount unit file, matching mount unit file must exist, which is activated when the automount path is accessed. So what do we start to suspect here is that we don't even have to enable it. Example, if an automount unit home Leonard automount is active and the user accesses home Leonard to mount unit home Leonard mount would be activated. That all makes sense. And if we quickly go through the options in the unit file, we can see that there's aware and that there's a directory mode. So basically what we learn from here is, hey, you don't have to enable it. It just sits on top of the mount file, which sounds good. So I don't have to enable it, which is okay. What I do want to do, just as a quick double check, is systemctl status systemd.automount. And there we can see loaded and it's inactive and where systemd. This is perfect. This is what I wanted to see. I just wanted to make sure that it is not enabled by default. Oh, by the way, this is in the category, look how cool this is. You know what you see here? Systemctl show is showing all of the options that you can use in the systemctl unit file. Systemctl show is so cool because it's telling you exactly what is available in a unit file. To be honest, systemctl show is way better than the man pages. Remember this one. Might be the coolest thing that you have learned tonight. Now I have enabled my mount and I have not enabled my system, my automount. What I'm going to do now, I'm going to reboot. Yeah, I have enabled it and I really want it to be working through the reboot. I hope then that the cool was not about this reboot, but about systemctl show. Systemctl show is cool. Systemctl show rocks. Question is it wise or even possible to auto unmount, e.g. home directories when users log off? No, not really, because it will happen automatically. Any traction yet on wildcard automount using systemd method? I haven't found any yet. Okay, I need to hurry up because I have another session starting in 8 minutes. What we need to do is systemctl status. What was the name again? Groups.mount. And we can see that, oops, is it mounted? It shouldn't be mounted. Mount. That's way too much information. Let's filter that to grab groups. Yeah, I'm sorry, I failed my demo. It is mounted. It should not be mounted, and the idea is that I'm going to the groups directory and hey, can you see that it is now automatically be mounted. But anyway, this talks you through the procedure of setting up automount through systemd. I'm sorry, I really don't have time to troubleshoot it right now, but that's a nice cliffhanger. And hey, you can watch my videos. I explain in there how it's working. Now you're welcome to follow through email or anything if you want to have more questions. So I want to thank you very much for attending this session.